And when she no longer feels the need to test you, when she stops guarding her heart behind silence and subtle cues, something profound begins to unfold. She stops looking for a hero and starts walking beside a partner, not someone to rescue her from life's storms, but someone who stands firm within them. This is the moment most men misunderstand. They believe their value lies in fixing, in providing, in proving. But real value, the kind that creates lasting devotion, is found in partnership. Equal footing, shared strength. She doesn't want to be carried. She wants to be met, eye to eye, heart to heart, soul to soul. Most men, conditioned by ego, see relationships as a performance. They try to be the strongest, the smartest, the one in control. But control is not strength. It's fear in disguise, the fear of losing, the fear of not being enough. The stoic man knows this. He doesn't lead by dominance. He leads by presence. He doesn't elevate himself above her. He rises with her. And in that balance, something powerful emerges, mutual respect, not given out of obligation, but earned through daily action, through the way he speaks to her, even in disagreement, through the way he supports her dreams, not because he needs to impress her, but because he believes in her, through the way he handles conflict, not with anger, but with calm, not with blame, but with accountability. This is not weakness. This is the highest form of strength. Because true power isn't about being the center of attention. It's about creating space for another human being to grow, without fear of being overshadowed. When she sees that you don't feel threatened by her success, that you celebrate her wins as if they were your own, something shifts inside her. She stops competing for attention. She stops holding back her light. She begins to rise, not because you lifted her, but because you didn't block her. And that is the essence of real partnership. It's not about splitting chores or sharing bills. It's about sharing power, about building a life where both of you can become who you're meant to be, without sacrifice, without resentment, without silent surrender. Most men fail here because they equate love with ownership. They think loyalty means control. They believe that if she's truly theirs, she'll align with their vision, their goals, their pace. But love is not possession. It's permission to grow, to change, to evolve. And the man who grants that permission doesn't lose her. He becomes irreplaceable. Because she knows deep in her bones that with him, she is free. Free to speak her mind, free to pursue her purpose, free to be imperfect. And in that freedom, she gives not out of duty, but out of desire. She chooses him, not because she has to, but because she wants to. Every single day. That choice isn't forced, it's natural, like breath, like gravity. And it's built on one unshakable foundation, the certainty that he doesn't need her to complete him. He chooses her to walk beside him. That distinction changes everything. Because when a woman knows she's not your missing piece, but your equal partner, she stops fearing loss. She stops clinging. She steps into her full power, and so do you. You stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop hiding your doubts. And in that shared authenticity, love stops being fragile. It becomes unbreakable. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because it's built on two people who don't lean on each other out of weakness, but stand together out of strength. So ask yourself, are you trying to be the hero of her story? Or are you building a story where both of you are the main characters? Are you seeking control, or are you cultivating connection? Because the man who walks beside her, steady and sure, not because he's flawless, but because he's committed to growth, that man doesn't just keep her heart, he earns it again and again. And in that quiet, consistent choice to stand as equals, he builds a love that doesn't fade. It deepens, it endures, it becomes legend. And in that quiet space where both of you stand as equals, no masks, no games, no silent battles for control, something deeper begins to surface. She starts to let down the final wall. Not the one built from fear of abandonment, or the one shaped by past betrayals, but the one forged in silence, the wall around her emotional rhythm. Because even when trust is strong, even when partnership is real, there's a sensitivity that runs beneath the surface. She feels your energy before you speak. She senses your distraction before you notice it yourself. She knows when you're present, and when you're only pretending to be. Science confirms what every woman already knows. Her nervous system is finely tuned to emotional shifts. Not because she's overly emotional, but because survival for centuries depended on it. And though the world has changed, biology hasn't. She feels inconsistency like a tremor in the ground, a sudden coldness, a distracted glance, a voice that's slightly off. Most men dismiss this as moodiness. They say, "You're overreacting," but she isn't reacting to what you say, she's reacting to what you are. And when you're inconsistent, hot one moment, distant the next, her body responds like it's under threat. Not because you're dangerous, but because unpredictability breaks safety. And safety, once broken, takes time to rebuild. The average man swings with his emotions. He's passionate one day, withdrawn the next. He's all in until life gets hard, and then he retreats. That inconsistency isn't just frustrating, it's destabilizing. It makes her question everything. Not your love, but your reliability. The Stoic man understands this. He doesn't promise perfection, he promises consistency. Not the robotic kind, not the cold, detached kind, but the deep, unwavering presence of a man who knows himself, who doesn't let external chaos dictate his inner state. When he's tired, he doesn't take it out on her. When he's stressed, he doesn't shut down. He communicates, he regulates, he stays grounded, because he knows his stability is her sanctuary. And so he disciplines his energy. He masters his reactions. He chooses every single day to show up as the same man, calm, clear, dependable, not because he ignores his emotions, but because he processes them before they reach her. He doesn't burden her with his chaos. He contains it. He transforms it. And in that containment, he becomes a source of strength, not another weight she has to carry. This is not suppression. This is leadership, the kind that doesn't demand loyalty, but earns it through steady action. When she knows she can count on your energy, when she knows your love isn't conditional on your mood, she relaxes. Her nervous system calms. Her heart opens. She stops scanning for danger because she no longer feels it. And in that peace, intimacy deepens. Not the physical kind alone, but the soul-level connection that comes from feeling emotionally safe. That safety doesn't come from grand declarations. It comes from the 1,000 small moments where you choose presence over distraction, where you put the phone down, where you look her in the eyes, where you say, "I'm here," and mean it in your bones. Most men don't realize how rare this is. In a world of noise, of distraction, of fleeting attention, a man who is consistently present is revolutionary. He doesn't need to prove anything. His presence is the proof. And when she experiences that day after day, week after week, she doesn't just fall in love. She settles into love. She builds her life around it. Because she knows this isn't temporary, this is foundation. So ask yourself, when you're with her, are you really with her? Or are you somewhere else, mentally, emotionally, energetically? Do you let your stress leak into the space between you, or do you protect that space like it's sacred? Because it is. And the man who guards it, who shows up with steady energy, who refuses to be swayed by every passing emotion, that man doesn't just keep her heart, he becomes the reason it stays open. And in a world that teaches her to guard it, that is the rarest gift of all. That consistency, the unwavering presence, the calm in the chaos, the man who doesn't shift with the wind, is the bedrock. But even on this solid ground, there's a deeper hunger that shapes every choice she makes, every word she speaks, every moment she leans in or pulls away. It's not just about feeling safe. It's about being respected, not flattered, not appeased, not placated with empty praise, but truly respected for her mind, for her choices, for her independence. Most men confuse respect with obedience. They think if she listens to them, she respects them. Or worse, they believe respect is earned through dominance, through proving they're stronger, smarter, in control. But that's not respect. That's fear. And fear might keep someone silent, but it will never keep them close. The woman who stays out of fear will eventually leave in silence. The one who stays out of respect, she stays with fire in her heart. Because respect is not demanded. It is given freely, when she feels seen as an equal, not as an accessory. And the Stoic man knows this. He doesn't need to assert his authority because his presence is authority enough. He doesn't belittle her opinions to feel taller. He leans into them. He asks, "What do you think?" Not to impress her, but because he genuinely wants to know. He listens deeply without waiting to speak. He considers, he reflects, and when he disagrees, he does so with dignity, not dismissal. That quiet reverence for her intellect, her judgment, her autonomy, that is what ignites true loyalty. Because a woman does not give her heart to a man who tries to shrink her. She gives it to the one who makes her feel larger, who doesn't feel threatened by her strength, but inspired by it, who doesn't need to be the smartest in the room to feel like a man. This is where most fail. They see her independence as a challenge to their role. They feel the need to lead by controlling, by deciding, by overriding. But real leadership isn't about making all the decisions. It's about creating a space where both voices matter, where power isn't hoarded, but shared. The man who respects her enough to let her lead in her domain, her career, her passions, her emotions, doesn't lose authority. He gains something far greater, her trust, her admiration, her willingness to follow him when it matters. Because respect is reciprocal. When she feels honored, she honors in return, not out of duty, but out of deep, unshakable regard. She defends him, she supports him, she stands with him, not because she has to, but because she wants to. And that desire? It doesn't come from control, it comes from honor. The Stoic man protects her dignity as fiercely as his own. He never speaks ill of her, not in public, not in private, not even in anger. He shields her from disrespect, even from others. And in doing so, he proves that his love isn't conditional on her perfection. It's rooted in her worth, exactly as she is. He doesn't try to change her. He doesn't shame her emotions. He doesn't mock her dreams. He stands beside them. He says, "I've got you." Not with words, but with action. And over time, that respect becomes the quiet engine of the relationship. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand attention, but it holds everything together. Because when a woman feels respected, she stops defending herself. She stops keeping score. She stops bracing for judgment. She relaxes into the relationship. She becomes softer, not because she's weak, but because she's safe. And in that softness, real intimacy blooms. Not the kind that fades with passion, but the kind that deepens with time. So ask yourself, do you respect her enough to let her be wrong? To let her make her own choices, even if you wouldn't make them? Do you honor her mind or just her body? Because the man who respects her fully, her strength, her voice, her independence, doesn't just earn her love. He earns her lifelong devotion. And that is not something you win. It's something you become. And when she feels that deep, unshakable respect, when she knows her voice matters, her choices are honored, her mind is valued, something ancient within her begins to awaken. Not a need to be saved, not a desire to be chased, but a longing to be held, not in arms alone, but in certainty. The certainty that you will not leave, that you will not fade, that you will not vanish when things get hard. This is the deepest fear she carries. Buried beneath strength, beneath independence, beneath every wall she's built, the fear of abandonment. Not always in action, sometimes just in presence. The fear that one day you'll simply stop showing up, that your love was conditional on excitement, on ease, on how she made you feel. And so she watches, not with suspicion, but with survival. She notices when you pull back, when your energy shifts, when your words don't match your actions. She doesn't always speak it. She may not even fully understand it. But her body remembers every time someone she loved disappeared physically or emotionally. The Stoic man sees this. He doesn't mock it as insecurity. He honors it as humanity. And instead of running from the weight of it, he carries it with grace. He knows that trust isn't built in grand declarations. It's built in the quiet, consistent choice to stay, to show up, to be there, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. Most men fail here because they believe love should be effortless. They think that if they feel tired, distracted, or overwhelmed, it's okay to withdraw, that she should understand. But withdrawal, even when justified, feels like abandonment to the heart. And every time you retreat without awareness, you deepen the wound you're meant to heal. The wise man does not disappear. He communicates. He says, "I'm going through something, but I'm not leaving you." He maintains connection even when he's not at his best, because he understands his presence is her anchor. And an anchor doesn't vanish when the storm hits. It holds, firm, unmoved. That's the promise she's waiting for, not in words, but in action. Not in "I love you," but in "I'm here every day," without condition, without calculation. The man who masters this doesn't earn loyalty through charm. He commands it through reliability. He doesn't play games. He doesn't use silence as punishment. He doesn't make her chase him to prove her worth. He eliminates the doubt before it forms. He shows up early. He follows through. He keeps his word, not because he has to, but because his integrity demands it. And in that consistency, her fear begins to dissolve. Not because he forces it away, but because he makes it unnecessary. She no longer needs to test you, because you've already proven yourself, not once, but repeatedly. She stops asking, "Do you really care?" because your actions answer before she speaks. This is not about perfection. It's about commitment. The daily decision to choose the relationship, not just when it's rewarding, but when it's demanding, when she's difficult, when life is heavy, when connection feels distant. That's when real love is proven. Not in the spark of the beginning, but in the fire that keeps burning long after the world has tried to extinguish it. And when she sees that, when she feels that, you become more than a partner. You become sanctuary, the one place she never has to fear loss, because you've shown beyond doubt that you are not going anywhere. So ask yourself, are you consistent only when it's easy? Or do you stay present even when it's hard? Do you let your moods dictate your love, or do you lead with integrity no matter what? Because the man who conquers abandonment, not by promising forever, but by living it day after day, is the man who doesn't just keep her heart. He becomes the reason it never wants to leave, and that is the quiet power of true love. And when she no longer fears abandonment, when she truly believes you're not going anywhere, something shifts at the core of her being. She stops protecting herself. She stops holding back. She begins to reveal the part of her that she's hidden from almost everyone, the real her. Not the polished version, not the strong, capable, put-together image, but the one beneath, the one with doubts, fears, scars, and dreams too fragile to speak aloud. This is the deepest level of trust. Not just believing you won't leave, but believing you won't judge, that you won't turn her vulnerability into a weakness, that you won't use her truth against her later. Most men are unprepared for this moment. When she finally opens up, they panic. They try to fix it. They minimize it. They say, "Don't worry," or "It's not that bad," not realizing they've just shut the door she worked so hard to open. Because what she needs in that moment isn't a solution. She needs to be met, fully, completely, with presence, not pressure. The Stoic man understands this. He doesn't rush to make it better. He doesn't offer advice unless asked. Instead, he says, "Thank you for telling me," or "I'm here with you." Simple words, profound impact. Because in that moment, he's not just listening, he's honoring her courage. And that honor becomes the bridge to true intimacy. Because intimacy isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's the merging of two souls who no longer wear masks, who see each other. Not in perfection, but in truth. And the man who can hold that truth without flinching becomes irreplaceable, not because he's flawless, but because he's real. He shares his own struggles, his own fears, his own regrets, not to burden her, but to say, without words, "You're not alone. I'm not perfect either. And I still choose us." That vulnerability, controlled, intentional, grounded, is not weakness. It's the highest form of strength, because it takes more courage to be seen than to perform. Most men avoid vulnerability because they confuse it with neediness. But neediness is desperate. Vulnerability is disciplined. It's choosing to open up, not because you demand comfort, but because you trust deeply. And when you show her that, when she sees you strong and steady, still willing to say, "I'm struggling too," she doesn't see weakness. She sees authenticity. And authenticity is magnetic. It pulls her in. It makes her feel safe to be fully human. No pretense, no performance. Just two people, standing in their truth, choosing each other anyway. This is where real connection is born, not in the highs of passion, but in the depth of honesty. In the quiet moments when you say, "I was scared today," or "I don't have all the answers," and she responds not with pity, but with deeper love, because she sees you, not as a hero, not as a provider, not as a fixer, but as a man, whole, real, grounded. And in that space, love stops being conditional. It stops depending on mood, on success, on external validation. It becomes a choice. A daily, deliberate, unwavering choice to show up as yourself, to let her show up as herself, and to build something real from the raw materials of truth. So ask yourself, do you hide your struggles to appear strong? Or do you share them to build real connection? Do you expect her to be open while you remain closed? Or do you lead with courage, knowing that your vulnerability gives her permission to be free? Because the man who dares to be truly known, flaws, fears, and all, doesn't just earn love. He creates a bond that can't be broken. Not by time, not by distance, not by hardship. Because when two people stop pretending, when they stop performing, when they simply are, that's when love becomes eternal. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And real, in a world full of illusions, is the rarest thing of all. And when both of you stand in that raw, unfiltered truth, when the masks are off, the defense is down, and the love is no longer performative but profoundly real, something even greater begins to emerge. She doesn't just want to be known. She wants to be inspired. Not by empty promises or fleeting passion, but by a man who stands for something. A man who moves through the world with purpose. Because deep down, beneath every emotion, every need, every vulnerability, there is one force that draws her more than any other, a man on a mission. Not a mission to win her, but a mission that exists independently of her. A man who is building, creating, growing, not for applause, not for validation, but because he refuses to waste his life on trivial things. This is where most men lose, not because they stop loving, but because they stop becoming. They let relationships become the center of their identity. They mold themselves to please, to keep her close, to avoid conflict. And in doing so, they shrink. They lose their fire. They become dependent on her affection to feel worthy. And that subtle shift where love turns into need is the quiet death of attraction. The Stoic man sees this trap. He doesn't abandon the relationship to chase his purpose. He elevates it. He understands that the most powerful bond isn't built on need, but on shared growth. So he doesn't stop building his life when he finds love. He builds it with more intensity because he knows she doesn't want a man who revolves around her. She wants a man who stands beside her, eyes forward, moving toward something greater. When she sees you committed to your purpose, when she watches you work through setbacks without complaint, when she sees you show up for your goals even when no one is watching, she doesn't just admire you, she trusts you. She trusts that you won't fall apart when life gets hard, that you won't look to her to fill your emptiness, that you are whole on your own, and you choose her not because you need her, but because you want her. And that distinction, it changes everything. Because a woman is not drawn to a man who needs her love to survive. She is drawn to a man whose love is an overflow of a life already full. A man who is disciplined, driven, grounded in values. A man who leads not just in the relationship but in life. That kind of man doesn't chase her attention. He commands it by simply being who he is. And when she sees that, when she feels the quiet power of a man who knows his direction, she doesn't follow out of obligation. She joins you willingly, eagerly, because she wants to be part of something meaningful. Not just a romance, but a legacy. Psychology confirms this. Long-term attraction in women is directly tied to perceived purpose and self-direction in men. It's not about status or wealth. It's about inner certainty, the unshakable sense that this man has a reason to get up in the morning, one that doesn't depend on her mood, her approval, or her presence. When you embody that, you stop competing for her attention. You become the source of it. And that doesn't mean neglecting the relationship. It means strengthening it from the inside out. Because a man with purpose doesn't neglect love. He deepens it. He brings energy, clarity, and strength into the space between you. He doesn't drain her with his insecurities. He uplifts her with his resolve. So ask yourself, are you building a life that inspires her? Or are you asking her to inspire yours? Are you moving towards something, or are you just trying to hold on? Because the man who walks with purpose, calm, focused, unwavering, doesn't just keep her heart. He gives her a reason to believe in love again, not as fantasy, not as escape, but as partnership in a life that matters. And that, more than charm, more than passion, more than words, is what makes a woman choose you. Not just today, but every single day after. And when she sees that purpose burning in you, not for show, not for praise, but as a quiet, relentless fire, you begin to represent something far greater than a partner. You become a symbol of what's possible, not just for her, but for herself, because a man with direction doesn't just live his life, he inspires hers. He doesn't demand her growth, he ignites it by simply refusing to settle. And in that refusal, he gives her permission to rise, not to please him, not to keep up. But because she now believes, deep in her bones, that a meaningful life isn't a fantasy, it's a choice, and you've proven it can be done. This is the final transformation. The moment when love stops being about two people trying to make each other happy and becomes about two people challenging each other to become who they were meant to be. Most men fear this. They think that if she grows, she might outgrow them. So they unconsciously pull her back through criticism, indifference, or emotional withdrawal. But the Stoic man does the opposite. He leans into her evolution. He celebrates her progress like it's his own. He says, I knew you could do it, not with pride in having predicted it, but with joy in having witnessed it. Because he understands her success is not a threat. It's a reflection of the environment he helped create, one of safety, respect, and unwavering belief. And in that space, both of you grow, not at the same pace, not in the same way, but together, side by side, pushing forward, because real love isn't a cage, it's a launch pad. And the man who becomes that launch pad doesn't cling to comfort. He embraces growth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it demands change, even when it means confronting his own limitations. He doesn't see her ambition as a challenge to his role. He sees it as proof that he's doing something right, that he's not just loving her, but leading her toward her highest self. And that leadership isn't loud, it's quiet. It's in the way he handles adversity without breaking, the way he stays committed when others would walk away, the way he chooses integrity when no one is watching. These are not grand acts, they are daily disciplines. And over time, they build a presence so strong, so grounded, that she doesn't just feel loved, she feels called to be better, called to be bolder, called to stop hiding, because she sees in you what she wants to become: unshakable, clear, free. And when two people are committed to growth, not just individually, but together, love stops being fragile. It becomes a force. A shared mission, a life built not on fleeting feelings, but on shared values, mutual respect, and relentless forward motion. This is not the end of the journey, it's the beginning of the real one, the one where both of you stop asking, will this last? And start living as if it already has, where you stop measuring love by passion and start measuring it by depth, by resilience, by the quiet certainty that no matter what comes, you'll face it, not as two people clinging to each other, but as two forces moving in the same direction. So ask yourself, are you inspiring her to grow, or are you asking her to shrink to fit your fear? Are you leading with strength, or are you hiding behind comfort? Because the man who refuses to stop becoming, who leads with purpose, who loves with integrity, who stands with unshakable calm, is not just building a relationship. He's building a legacy. One where love isn't just felt, it's lived every single day. With fire, with truth, with honor. And that, more than anything, is what makes a woman not just stay, but stay proud. Proud to walk beside you, proud to build with you, proud to be known by the man who didn't just love her, but helped her become herself. And when that legacy begins to take shape, not in words, not in dreams, but in the daily rhythm of a life lived with intention, something shifts in the very core of who you are. You stop seeing love as something you manage and start experiencing it as something you embody. It's no longer about saying the right things, doing the right gestures, or reacting perfectly in every moment. It's about being the kind of man whose presence alone brings peace, whose silence speaks louder than words, whose choices, even when unseen, radiate integrity. This is the highest stage of mastery. Not control, not perfection, not dominance, but alignment. The alignment of your actions with your values, your words with your character, your love with your truth. Most men spend their lives trying to get love. They chase validation, they perform, they adapt, they shrink, they inflate. They do everything but become the kind of man love naturally flows toward. But the stoic man doesn't chase, he becomes. He understands that real connection isn't attracted to effort. It's drawn to authenticity, to stillness, to the quiet confidence of a man who knows himself, accepts his flaws, and refuses to stop growing. And when you reach this level, you stop worrying about losing her, not because you take her for granted, but because you've built something that cannot be taken. You've built trust that isn't shaken by silence, loyalty that isn't tested by distance, love that doesn't depend on circumstances, but persists through them, because it's rooted in something deeper than emotion. It's rooted in character, and character doesn't fade. It strengthens with every challenge, with every choice. With every moment you choose patience over reaction, understanding over judgment, presence over distraction. This is where most relationships fail, not from lack of love, but from lack of depth, from staying on the surface, from treating love like a feeling to be chased rather than a state to be lived. But you're not most men. You've gone deeper. You've faced the fears. You've mastered the reactions. You've learned to hold space, not just for her pain, but for your own. And in doing so, you've become more than a partner. You've become a force of stability in a world that constantly pulls in every direction. She doesn't just love you, she relies on you, not to fix her, not to carry her, but to be the unshakable truth in her life. The one thing she knows will not change. That certainty, that rock-solid reliability, is the rarest gift a man can give, and it doesn't come from luck. It comes from discipline, from the daily choice to show up as the man you said you'd be, even when no one is watching, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like it. That's when greatness is built, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, not in applause, but in silence. And when she sees that, when she feels the weight of your consistency, the depth of your integrity, the fire of your purpose, she doesn't just stay, she commits, not with words, but with her life, with her energy, with her soul, because she knows beyond doubt that you are not just loving her, you are worthy of her love. So ask yourself, are you building a relationship based on fear of loss? Or are you living a life so strong, so grounded, so aligned that love stays because it wants to? Are you waiting for her to change, or are you becoming the change? Because the man who masters himself doesn't need to control anything. He already has everything. Not because he has her, but because he has himself. And from that place of inner sovereignty, real love doesn't just survive, it thrives, it expands, it endures, and it becomes the quiet, unstoppable force that defines not just a relationship, but a life. This is not the end. It's the beginning of who you were meant to be. And when you stand in that fullness, when you are no longer chasing, no longer performing, no longer afraid of losing, something profound happens. You stop seeing love as a transaction and start recognizing it for what it truly is, a reflection, a mirror. Every moment with her, every silence, every glance, every unspoken tension or deep connection, they're not random. They're echoes of your inner world. The way she responds to you, the way she leans in or pulls away, the level of trust she gives, the depth of her surrender. None of it exists in a vacuum. It is shaped moment by the energy you bring into the space between you. Most men never realize this. They blame miscommunication. They point to her mood. They say she changed. But the truth is far more powerful and far more liberating. She didn't change. The conditions changed. And those conditions are set by you, by your presence, by your consistency, by your emotional mastery. The Stoic man sees this clearly. He doesn't wait for her to be more open, more loving, more connected. He asks, what am I reflecting? When she feels distant, he doesn't chase. He checks his alignment. When trust feels fragile, he doesn't demand reassurance. He strengthens his integrity because he knows love doesn't respond to words. It responds to energy, to truth, to the silent signals you send through your actions, your posture, your stillness. And when you are grounded, when you are clear, when you are at peace with yourself, she doesn't just feel it, she magnetizes toward it. Not because you're trying to attract her, but because stability is the most attractive force in human connection. Chaos pulls at first, with its excitement and drama, but it drains, it burns, it collapses. Stillness, on the other hand, draws deeper over time. It heals, it restores, it builds. And a man who embodies stillness, without emptiness, without indifference, but with quiet fire, becomes irresistible not because he wants to be, but because he is. This is not manipulation. This is mastery. The mastery of self is the foundation of all great relationships. Because you cannot create safety if you're internally chaotic. You cannot inspire trust if you're driven by fear. You cannot offer freedom if you're clinging to control. The outer world of love is always a reflection of your inner world. So if you want more love, don't chase her. Cultivate yourself. If you want more intimacy, don't demand closeness. Become more present. If you want more loyalty, don't beg for faithfulness. Become the kind of man it's impossible to leave. That is the real work. The daily discipline of waking up and choosing courage over comfort, of choosing integrity over impulse, of choosing love not as a feeling, but as a practice. And when you do this, not for her, but for the man you refuse to stop becoming, she doesn't just notice, she transforms. Not because you changed her, but because you created the space for her to become who she's always wanted to be. A woman who feels safe, seen, respected, free. And in that freedom, she gives not out of obligation, but from overflow. Her love deepens. Her loyalty strengthens. Her presence becomes unwavering. Not because you earned it through effort, but because you embodied the kind of strength that makes love natural, effortless, eternal. So ask yourself, are you trying to fix the relationship? Or are you becoming the kind of man a great relationship can't help but follow? Because the truth is, you are not broken. She is not broken. The love is not broken. What's broken is the misunderstanding of where real power lies. It doesn't lie in words. It doesn't lie in grand gestures. It lies in who you are when no one is watching. And when you master that, when you become the unshakable center, everything else aligns. Not because you forced it, but because truth always finds its level. And love, real love, always flows towards strength. And when you finally grasp that love is not something you control, but something you cultivate through who you are, when you stop chasing outcomes and start embodying truth, freedom arrives. Not the kind that runs from commitment, but the kind that deepens it. The freedom to love without fear, to speak without calculation, to stand in your power without apology, because you've stopped measuring your worth by her reaction. You've stopped tying your value to whether she smiles, stays, or says she's happy. That shift, subtle, quiet, profound, is the moment everything changes. You're no longer reacting to her energy. You're leading with your own. And leadership in love isn't about dominance. It's about direction. It's about being the first to calm in the storm, the first to take responsibility, the first to apologize when wrong, the first to listen without defense. The Stoic man doesn't wait for her to go first. He goes first, not to win, but to set the tone. He knows that the energy he brings into the room doesn't just affect the moment, it shapes the future. A harsh word today becomes distance tomorrow. A moment of patience becomes trust the next week. A choice to understand instead of react builds loyalty that lasts years. He sees time not in days, but in consequences. And so he chooses wisely, not perfectly, never perfectly, but with intention. Because he understands great love isn't built in peaks of passion. It's built in the valleys of difficulty, in the quiet choices no one applauds, the choice to stay calm when she's upset, to be honest when it's easier to lie, to show up when he'd rather withdraw. These are not small things. They are the invisible bricks of a life that lasts. Most men fail not because they don't care, but because they care in the wrong way. They care with emotion, not with discipline. They love with intensity, not with consistency. And when the intensity fades, they assume the love is gone. But the wise man knows love doesn't fade. What fades is the lack of foundation. And the foundation is not chemistry, it's character. It's the daily decision to be better, not just for her, but for the standard you've set for yourself. When you live by that standard, not for recognition, not for reward, but because it's who you've decided to be, something shifts in her. She stops guarding her heart. She stops questioning your motives. She begins to follow your lead, not because you demand it, but because she trusts it. And that trust isn't blind. It's earned. In every moment you chose patience over anger. In every time you chose presence over distraction. In every silent decision to grow instead of blame. This is how loyalty is built, not with words, but with repetition, with proof, with time. And when she has seen it long enough, she no longer wonders if you'll stay. She knows, not because you promised, but because you've shown. And in that knowing, she relaxes, she opens. She gives more of herself, not because she has to, but because she finally feels safe enough to. That safety is not given. It's generated by you, by your strength, by your stillness, by your refusal to break when things get hard. So ask yourself, are you leading with fear, trying to hold on? Or are you leading with strength, creating a love that has no reason to leave? Because the man who masters himself doesn't need to control the relationship. He becomes the reason it thrives. And when you reach that level, not of perfection, but of unwavering commitment to growth, you stop worrying about the future. You stop replaying the past. You simply live fully, deeply, honestly in the present. And in that presence, love doesn't just survive, it expands, it breathes. It becomes not just a bond between two people, but a way of life, a life of courage, of integrity, of quiet, unshakable power. And that, more than anything, is the legacy of a man who didn't just love, but loved with mastery.